This program will show us how we can use TryParse methods. We're going to focus on two of them, Integer.TryParse and Double.TryParse. On the left side, we're going to enter a number of three-point field goals made. Could be basketball, could be football. We'll calculate the total points when we press a button and get an answer and a label. Those should be integers for the number of three-point field goals made. On the right-hand side, we'll look for a potential decimal, entering in a GPA, a grade point average, on a 4.000 scale, 4.000 scale. Press the calculate the letter grade and get either an A, B, C, D, or F. First, we'll deal with those three-point field goals. We're going to want to have a place to store the value of the number of three-point field goals made, so we'll make this variable called int three-point field goals. It will be an integer. We're also going to need to keep track in the end of the total number of points, so we'll declare another variable called int total points. It's also going to be an integer. We're hoping to multiply the number that the users put in by 3, but we've got to make sure that it actually is a number. Now, we've used try-catch before. Now we're going to use TryParse. Notice there's two things expected: a string, that for us that's going to be the text value of the text box, and then an integer variable that we're going to try to put it in. Again, a string, the text value of the text box for us, that's what we're going to type in first. txt threepoint.text, that is a string, comma, and then the variable we're going to try to put this value inside. We're going to try to parse an integer out of that string and put it into int three-point field goals. If it works, we'll get inside the nice part of the if where there's going to be good data. We'll actually have a little more checking to do there. I shouldn't have said to just do the calculation. If we get to the else, there's bad data. We were unsuccessful in trying to parse an integer out. So we're going to have a message box show up. I saved you the time of watching me type it. If you want to pause it and read it a little more closely, you can. We're just going to have a message box to show up if there's bad data. So we'll type in woof. That's not an integer. And we get the error message. We'll type in 6.75. That's not an integer. And it cannot be easily converted to an integer. That's narrowing too much. We'll have nothing in there. That does not parse into an integer. It was kind of a pain to click back into the text box, so we're going to assign the focus back to the very text box that has the problem. txt three-point.focus. All right. Well, if we're in this part of the if, we know that we got an integer inside int three-point field goals. It's possible, though, that this integer is negative. It would make sense that it could be 0, sadly, or positive, but we don't want it to be negative. So let's make sure it really is positive. If it is, then we'll calculate the total points. So if int three-point field goals is greater than or equal to 0, because 0 is actually acceptable also. It's possible that you didn't have any three-point field goals. So now we know it's really going to be okay to do the calculation because we did get 0 or a positive number of three-point field goals made. Otherwise, we know that we must have got a negative integer. We're already guaranteed that we were able to obtain an integer, but if it's not greater than or equal to 0, it must be negative. We'll just copy and paste this same error message. Should have copied and pasted to assign the focus. We'll have to come back and do that later. Up here in the good part of the if, now it's okay to calculate the total points. We'll take the three-point field goals made, int three-point field goals made, and multiply by 3. And now the variable int total points has all the points. And it's ready to display in our label. And we got to remember to type toString. Here we go. Well, if we made 15 three-point field goals, that's 45 points. Here's another important thing we should do. Make a text changed event. For example, we just typed in 15 and got the answer 45 when we clicked the button. If we go back to that text box and backspace or somehow get rid of that 15, we really need to clear out the answer for the total points. So we'll make lbl_points.text equals string.empty. So here's 1545. We take the 15 out and notice that our total points went away, and we don't get an answer back until we click calculate total points. This is where we remembered to assign the focus to the text box when there was an error. Would have been a lot easier if just had remembered to copy and paste that the first time. We'll make sure this actually works. Type in a negative value, get an error message, and there's the focus back in the text box that needs the repair. So that's a way to try to parse an integer out of a string. We can also try to parse a double. That's what we'll do for our GPA. So we had Integer.TryParse. Now we're going to use Double.TryParse. We're going to declare a double variable, dbl_GPA, as double. That's going to store our numeric GPA. We want to get what's in the text box and put it into that variable. So here's Double.TryParse. So there's going to be a string, the text in our text box, and then a double variable that we're going to put the value in if we really can parse a double out of it. txt_GPA.text is the string, and the variable we're going to put it in, if it works, is dbl_GPA. So in the true part of the if it really is true that that does work, that means the data is double. If that is false, then the data isn't double. These TryParse methods return true, false. Well, if the data isn't double, we need to put a message box in there. I will copy this one and make the changes. I'll save you the time of watching it. I'll just edit the video right there, and you can see the changes that were made. Should have remembered to assign the focus to that text box as well. Looks like I forgot, and we'll need to do it later. If Double.TryParse returns a true value, that means that it did work. That means that dbl_GPA does have a double inside of it. If it's greater than or equal to 4, your grade point average means that you have an A. We'll put that letter A in the label, the text property of the label. Else if dbl_GPA is greater than or equal to 3.0. Remember, we don't have to worry about it being greater than or equal to 4.0. We already took care of that. We have kind of a cascading effect in this else if structure. Now we know that that's going to result in the letter B. Else if dbl_GPA is greater than or equal to 2.0. You've got a C. We'll put that in the text property of LBL letter grade. Else if dbl_GPA is greater than or equal to 1.0. You've got a D. That's what we'll put inside the text property of LBL letter grade. We're going to even check down to 0. Else if your dbl_GPA is greater than or equal to 0.0, that's an F. It's also possible that we did successfully get a double parsed out of the text box, but the value is negative. So that's what this else would cover. Anything that didn't fit the above ifs and else ifs must be negative. So we'll copy and paste the same error message. And looks like maybe we'll remember to assign the focus this time. A good idea, if there's an error in a text box and you notify the users about it, it's very handy to put the focus right back where the error is. It's a lot easier for them to fix it. And again, I want to remind you that these TryParse methods return true, false. That's why they're so handy in ifs. You can see if it's true or if it's false. So let's try some values out. Let's try a number greater than, oh, my bad, let's try something that doesn't work. Woof, that's not a good one. -8.46, that's not good. and we're successfully getting error messages, and the focus is going back in the text box. 4.1 is greater than 4. 3.4 is greater than 3. 2.2 is greater than 2. 1.1 is greater than 1. 0.456 is greater than 0. Looks like we need to add some text change event action to this. Let's try right on the nose. 1.00 is a D. 2.00 is a C. 3.00 is a B. And a 4.00 is an A. Let's take care of the text changed event that we forgot to put in. Again, if the GPA is changed in the text box, then the letter grade should go away. And users cannot see a new letter grade until they press the button. There. So those are TryParse methods, another way to validate data or input that a user gives to us. And again, I want to emphasize they return true or false. And that's why they're very useful to use in if statements.